In a swamp, a man is fishing. Despite being surrounded by crocodiles, he easily defeats them. It seems this isn't his first encounter with crocodiles, as he acts with such skill. Suddenly, a terrifying sound rings out and he thinks it belongs to vampires. The man speaks to his imaginary audience and shows a crown belonging to an unwilling vampire bride that he finds in the swamp. The girl doesn't want to marry a vampire, but she is tricked. The scene then shifts to Mystery Inc. investigating the sewers under a factory. Suddenly, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy hear a terrifying sound and accidentally slip and fall. The large shadow of the cockroach monster quickly appears, causing the others to rush to their rescue. But all Velma and Daphne find is a cockroach casting a shadow. The cockroach monster appears the very next second and knocks Scooby-Doo and Shaggy unconscious. Fred, while running to help, accidentally falls into his own trap. Velma looks around and spots a pipe, so she opens it and sprays the monster. As a result, the cockroach monster is defeated and the mastermind behind it is revealed, Clopper disguised as the cockroach monster to attract customers to his extermination business. Although Velma's deduction is correct, capturing the culprit exhausts Mystery Inc. Afterwards, Velma suggests going on a trip and everyone agrees. But Velma has no intention of revealing the location in order to make them curious. For Scooby-Doo and Shaggy, anywhere is fine as long as they don't continue to act as bait for monsters. Soon Velma leads Mystery Inc. to their destination, but while explaining, she almost runs into a passerby. Scooby-Doo and Shaggy see his appearance and think he is a vampire, so Velma explains that it is only a costume. It turns out she leads Mystery Inc. to a town that is holding the Vampire Festival, a celebration of everything related to vampires. Velma and Daphne are excited because they are both huge fans of vampire stories. In contrast, Shaggy is worried because he fears immortal creatures sleeping in coffins, always lurking to suck blood and turn people into vampires. Fred then notices that the town was founded in the 19th century by Abraham Van Helsing, a famous vampire hunter associated with Count Dracula. It is still owned by the descendants of the Van Helsing family. After hearing this, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy decide this is the last time they let Velma choose a travel destination. Just as Fred says nothing will happen, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy flip through their diary to prove they have heard that phrase many times before. Scooby-Doo and Shaggy are not the only ones who dislike vampires. They see Jesper protesting against the festival as an anti-vampire agitator and they agree with him, but then Fred appears with plenty of food, and they immediately change their minds. Next, Mystery Inc. meets Lita, who is the festival organizer. Velma wants to ask about Vincent Van Helsing and Lita points to a man sitting alone. He is an author who writes about vampires during the vampire craze, but none of his books sell well. It turns out young people no longer favor traditional vampire stories. Mystery Inc. greets Vincent and he welcomes them because he is Velma's acquaintance. He introduces his vampire books, causing Velma to hide the modern vampire book she is holding. Vincent Van Helsing is a descendant of Abraham Van Helsing and works in the field of vampire studies, the academic study of vampires. He then leads Mystery Inc. to visit his centuries-old vampire museum. Daphne's attention quickly shifts to the jewelry of the vampire bride. Although the jewelry may be priceless, it is nothing compared to the inert body of Valdronia, a centuries-old vampire who once strikes fear into 100 million people. Scooby-Doo and Shaggy suspect it may be fake, but when they look closer, they become terrified and run away as Valdronia's eyes suddenly glow. Velma then examines the thick opaque glass seal. Fred says that even if Valdronia comes back to life, he cannot break through a 6-inch thick pane of glass. Vincent also hopes Valdronia can rise again to attract more tourists, so he does not need to rely on renting his house to Lita for a living, because she threatens to move out next year if the vampire festival does not generate more profit. Later, Vincent leads Mystery Inc. to watch a play performed by a troupe of vampire actors called Fangenchans. To be safe, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy wear garlic, but they do not know that any items harmful to vampires are forbidden there, so they end up eating all the garlic they have on them. The smell of garlic not only repels vampires but also drives away the people around them. Fangenchan's performance then begins. They not only dress up but also imitate vampire mannerisms. The performance soon ends and Daphne praises them enthusiastically. Suddenly, Fangenchan's announces they have another act called Vampire Resurrection. Hearing that, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy rush to run away, but it is too late. Fangenchan's begins performing a vampire resurrection chant. The spell is quickly recited from an ancient vampire book, making Vincent realize they are making a terrible mistake. Meanwhile, a security guard is on patrol when the ground suddenly shakes. Realizing something bad is about to happen, He pulls out his taser, but in a moment of carelessness he trips and falls. Fangenshans completes their performance, but Bram now realizes the vampire on stage is not one of their members. It is Valdronia who truly comes back to life and regains his freedom. The audience, unaware of the truth, simply praises the final act as spectacular. Afterwards, Henry, who is the troupe member supposed to play the role, recounts the entire incident. He is preparing to go on stage when he is suddenly knocked out. Vincent constantly criticizes Fangenshans for daring to use the vampire resurrection chant. They inadvertently unleash a terrible danger. However, Daphne is willing to forgive their leader Bram, simply because he is handsome. Later, Mystery Inc. inspects Valdronia's coffin and realizes he has escaped. Although the glass remains intact, Valdronia's body is nowhere to be seen. Not only that, Valdronia suddenly appears before Mystery Inc. to steal the vampire bride's jewelry. He quickly flies toward Daphne and wants her to become his bride. But the others do not let Valdronia achieve his goal so easily. The next day, Jesper takes advantage of the vampire's appearance to continue protesting against the vampire festival. Lita leaks information to the press and ignores the negative publicity in order to increase ticket sales. Meanwhile, Mystery Inc. discusses yesterday's events with Vincent. They suspect the vampire is fake because the camera system malfunctions at the exact moment he appears. Fred wonders how Valdronia escapes from the coffin, and Vincent explains that with a small trick then he can get out. At that moment, the security guard wakes up and says he feels a sharp pain in his neck. Scooby-Doo and Shaggy see the mark and immediately run away because they believe it is a vampire bite. Velma disagrees since the guard is still able to stand under sunlight. Vincent suggests the guard may have special antibodies that prevent him from transforming, but Fred immediately recognizes it as a burn mark caused by the taser. He once volunteered with the police, so he knows the signs well. The guard presses the taser against the wound and realizes Fred is absolutely right. However, too many questions about Valdronia remain unanswered, so Fred suggests they investigate this mystery. Meanwhile, Lita continues fabricating stories about vampires, and the crowd believes her, which directly helps promote the vampire festival and increases ticket revenue. Soon the sun rises and the vampire festival is packed with people. More and more people believe in vampires, and even Fred is drawn into the excitement. In this story, everyone benefits except Vincent because no one buys his books. Seeing this, Lita buys one copy from him, but her real intention is to mock him for being outdated. After that, Mystery Inc. follows Jesper and his protest to look for more clues, but they soon realize that the incident only makes him more famous and gives them nothing useful. As a result, the gang decides to take a risk and break into Jesper's car. Velma stays behind to stall for time. Scooby-Doo and Shaggy keep watch outside, while Fred and Daphne search inside. Before long, Fred and Daphne discover that Jesper plans to run for mayor. Meanwhile, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy fail to pay attention to their surroundings and are spotted. When the signal is given, Fred and Daphne run immediately. At that exact moment, Velma arrives just in time, gets everyone into the mystery machine, and they escape. Later, Mystery Inc. discusses the situation and believes that Jesper is using his anti-vampire crusade to gain media attention. However, Velma argues that media exposure alone is not enough to win the mayoral election. While they are talking, Valdronia suddenly appears and throws them into panic. Velma struggles to keep control of the van and manages to knock him away. But Valdronia does not stop and quickly shifts his target to Daphne. He attacks from the roof of the mystery machine, forcing Mystery Inc. to fight back desperately. At that moment, the mystery machine races downhill and begins swerving wildly. Valdronia finally lets go when he sees a tunnel ahead. At the same time, Jesper enters the vampire festival with a gang of vampire hunters to search for Valdronia. Lita refuses at first because he is frightening her customers, but she is forced to back down when he presents a deputation from the sheriff along with an inspection permit. Meanwhile, Velma, Fred, and Daphne return to the vampire festival. Elsewhere, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy wander off while looking for the food area. Because Scooby-Doo reads the map upside down, they accidentally wander into Fangenshans' area. Seeing how strangely they behave, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy distract Fangenshans and manage to escape. They believe they are finally safe, unaware that Valdronia is right behind them. He even throws a wooden stake at Shaggy, making Shaggy believe he has been bitten on the neck by a vampire. Only after Scooby-Doo and Shaggy hide inside a trash bin do they manage to escape from Valdronia. At that moment, Jesper is on patrol and happens to see them, hearing Shaggy claim that he has been bitten by a vampire. Combined with the darkness, so Jesper mistakes the ketchup on Shaggy's clothes for blood. He concludes that Shaggy has turned into a vampire. It is not until Scooby-Doo and Shaggy run deep into the swamp that Jesper and the gang of vampire hunters finally stop chasing them. Scooby-Doo climbs down first while Shaggy keeps staring at Scooby-Doo's neck. Believing that he is about to become a vampire, Shaggy tells Scooby-Doo to stay away from him. However, Scooby-Doo refuses to leave and is willing to stay by Shaggy's side. Seeing this, Shaggy tries to distance himself, but their bond is too strong to break. A true friend never abandons the other in times of trouble. Meanwhile, Jesper successfully obtains a ban on the Vampire Festival. This extreme action is seen as a victory for the local anti-vampire activist. Although it gives Jesper an advantage in his mayoral campaign, it directly harms Lita and Vincent, both of whom lose income from the festival. The press repeatedly criticizes the decision as short-sighted and a serious blow to the local economy. Lita decides that she no longer wants to bring the Vampire Festival to this poor town, which directly causes Vincent to lose his income from renting out his land. Just then Fred appears and says he cannot find Scooby-Doo and Shaggy anywhere, so he believes they have been captured by Valdronia. Velma and Daphne disagree and argue that vampires are not real. They point out that the piece of fabric they tore from Valdronia's costume is brand new, not something from hundreds of years ago. However, Vincent disagrees. He explains that he once replaced Valdronia's clothing because time had torn the fabric apart, while Valdronia's body remained unchanged. Daphne quickly examines Valdronia's original costume and realizes that it has not been produced for over 500 years. Vincent blames Fangenchans for spreading terror throughout the town, which suddenly makes Daphne think of Bram. She pretends that she wants to investigate them, but in truth she only wants to see him. Before long, Daphne arrives at the site and accidentally discovers a laser projector. She quickly resets it to its original position and then unexpectedly runs into Bram. Bram asks Daphne if she wants to learn more about vampires, and she immediately agrees. He uses a rope to lift her into the air and let her glide across the stage, saying that fate has brought them together. Feeling that everything happens far too fast, Daphne turns down Bram's confession. However, his true intention is to kidnap her and offer her to Valdronia. Meanwhile, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy wake up from a nap in the swamp, unaware that the area is filled with leeches, snakes, and crocodiles. They are terrified, so they run for their lives, not knowing what to do next. They accidentally spot a small hut. Before they can even knock, the owner hears them. Tully has not had visitors in a long time, so he warmly welcomes Scooby-Doo and Shaggy and treats them to a hearty meal. Shaggy wonders why Tully lives in such a remote place, and Tully explains that he is hiding from vampires. Hearing this, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy want to run away, but once the food is served they change their minds. While they are eating, Tully reveals that he used to be an inventor who created magical devices, technological gadgets, and all kinds of odd inventions. However, no one ever buys them because people believe they are useless. Refusing to give up, Tully invents his greatest creation, which is flying shoes. He carefully prepares to bring them to a shoe company, but a vampire suddenly attacks him and steals the shoes. Although Tully files an insurance claim, the company refuses to cover vampire attacks. Scooby-Doo and Shaggy can only comfort him and compliment his soup, unaware that its main ingredient is leeches. The moment they realize the truth, they run away in horror, though they still manage to thank him before leaving. At the same time, Fred prepares his gear to hunt Valdronia, while Vincent tells Velma about a vampire wedding ritual. In the ceremony, the bride's soul is stolen to grant the vampire unmatched power. However, the requirements for a vampire bride are extremely strict. She must be young, beautiful, and pure of heart. Upon hearing this, Fred and Velma immediately think of Daphne and realize that she is in danger. Just then, Fred receives a message from Daphne saying that she has been kidnapped by Fangenchans. Vincent adds that anyone who offers a bride to a vampire receives immortality in return. With no time to waste, Vincent tears up the map containing the ritual's coordinates so they can track Daphne down. Meanwhile, Fangenchans ties Daphne up and prepares to offer her to Valdronia. Mystery Inc. begins their mission, starting by crossing the swamp. A strange sound suddenly alerts them and Vincent is ambushed. Although Fred fires his homemade weapon repeatedly, he ends up capturing Shaggy instead. Scooby-Doo and Shaggy claim they are hiding because Shaggy might turn into a vampire at any moment, but Velma observes that Shaggy only has surface wounds. Elsewhere, Fangenchans lights a fire to summon Valdronia and decorates the bride to make her look more magnificent. They begin the summoning ritual, unaware that Mystery Inc. has already found them. Unfortunately, the group arrives too late because Valdronia has already appeared. He moves quickly toward Daphne, intent on turning her into a vampire bride. Shaggy volunteers as bait to distract him and runs as fast as he can while Valdronia chases closely behind. Scooby-Doo soon joins in to help, but Valdronia refuses to stop. Scooby-Doo swerves the canoe repeatedly, forcing Valdronia to switch tactics and hurl fireballs at Scooby-Doo and Shaggy. Meanwhile, Velma rushes to rescue Daphne, but the green Aphrodite mist makes her eyes water uncontrollably. At the same time, Fred prepares to capture Valdronia, but his equipment gets soaked. Scooby-Doo and Shaggy buy him time to fix it, but they are soon cornered by Valdronia. Just as he is about to strike, Velma and Daphne interrupt him. Valdronia is furious, so he decides to turn everyone into vampires. As he releases the green Aphrodite mist, Shaggy accidentally activates the canoe's propeller, blowing the mist straight back at him. Realizing his plan is about to be exposed, Valdronia attempts to flee, unaware that Fred is waiting and captures him when they remove the mask. It turns out, just as Velma suspects, that the mastermind is Vincent. His entire scheme is meant to boost book sales. Velma figures this out after reading Vincent's latest book called The Vampire Bride. Fangenshans is merely a group of pawns, manipulated through their blind faith. During Fangenshans' performances, Vincent uses a 3D laser projector along with another one in the museum to create the illusion of vampires. He uses a different piece of fabric to keep the plan from falling apart, escapes through the swamp using a simple mechanical device, and hides the green Aphrodite mist in a wrist-mounted gadget. In the end, the police arrive and arrest Vincent and Fangenshans. Vincent finally explains why he invites Mystery Inc. in the first place. A vampire story told by a group of mystery-loving teenagers sounds far more convincing than any ordinary tale. What he never expects is that Mystery Inc. not only uncovers the truth but also sends him straight to prison.